Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Your Town Matters. My guest today is the Mayor of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thanks for being here today, Brad.
It's good to be back.
Let's start off by talking about something that will affect all of New Brunswick, but St. Andrews in particular, municipal reform. How is that going to affect the town? Now, this is something that we're looking at for November of 2022, but obviously must be on the minds of council right now.
It is. When you think of municipal reform, for a lot of people, it's really still a relatively new topic. I know that there was a number of consultations that have happened over the last few years, but a lot of people weren't overly engaged in that process, and now all of a sudden they're hearing that their town could be part of another town, or their rural area or LSD could be part of a municipality, and it's a big change. So with change, you know, people typically are a little bit apprehensive about it, and I've myself have talked to our leaders in the LSDs. They all have their own little board with their own rep, and as a regional service commission, we've talked to other communities, and there is so many unknowns, but it's kind of kicking off this week. We just found out that who our facilitator is. So a gentleman named Don Fitzgerald, who is in charge of the Regional Service Commission in Fredericton, is going to be the facilitator for both St. Andrews and actually St. Stephen as well with theirs. And they're going to be meeting with ourselves and Shamcook and Bayside, who will be joining St. Andrews as one entity or one municipality. And a lot of people were kind of surprised because people assumed because of the schools that Boquebec might be part of this group, but Boquebec's part of a rural LSD. So when you look at St. Andrews, it'll be about merging Shamcook and Bayside with St. Andrews. And a lot of residents have a lot of concerns about that, and council itself is going to change as well as a result of that.
Okay. We're looking at, say, for instance, Blacks Harbour St. George. They have to have a full election because they're becoming one town, and obviously that changes the population completely. With St. Andrews, with Bayside and Shamcook, is it just by-elections for new representatives, and will they be just from those areas, or how will council change?
Correct. So when you look at St. George and Blacks Harbour, those two communities, they've got a lot more to figure out. It doesn't mean that we don't have things to figure out, but you know, you look at Minto Chipman, same story, two communities that are kind of a little bit apart even geographically, are going to have to find a way to work together with one town staff, maybe one CAO, a full election to your point. So St. Andrews, because our population did not increase by 50%, our current council remains intact. And to your point is we're going to be adding new members to our council. I don't know if it's 2 or 3. I would assume that it'll be a ward system, so there'll be a representative from Shamcook Bayside. It might be a situation where there's one at large for the area, because if you look for representation, you know, Shamcook and Bayside is roughly 50% of the population of St. Andrews. So if you had an equal number of seats, you have 6 councillors in St. Andrews, so maybe 3 would make sense, but I don't know. It might be 2, might be 3. I could be completely wrong. I really expect to find out more. And again, I do know that there is apprehension in Shamcook and Bayside. There is an LSDs across the province. When they were doing the consultation, the province made it clear that status quo wasn't an option. Something had to change. And unfortunately, through the engagement process, what a lot of people that were vocal said is they wanted status quo. So a lot of people are apprehensive. They like their way of life in the LSDs. And there's also concern that taxes will go up. Mm-hmm. It's no secret that municipalities' tax rates are generally higher than what they are when you live in an LSD. And the concern for if you're in the LSD is that your tax rate will go up to be what it is in the municipalities. But that's all stuff we have to work through. But there is examples of variable tax rates all the time. You pay a tax percentage based on the services you get. But I think the biggest challenge there is trust. People trust in government. Sometimes, I hate to say it, don't go hand in hand. And I've heard from a lot of people in the LSDs, and ideally they didn't like this change. But I've also heard from people in the LSDs that said that we've always been one. Personally, when I grew up, I had played hockey. My two wingers were from Shamcook and Bayside, oddly enough, and I looked at them as all from St. Andrews. We all went to school together. When we were, going to university, they lived outside town limits, but they said they were from St. Andrews, and someone asked. So I think there's definitely some really good positives that we can get out of that. But I think the first thing that we have to do is figure out a way that we can work together and find out a way we can work together where people start building trust and realize that the benefits of this process outweigh the cons to them. But time will tell.
Right. There's benefits. I think back to a couple years ago in Bayside with Little Bay Lobster, and the community there really had to rally together, get the media involved to make sure it didn't become an industrial area and affect their properties as well. So there is a benefit. I know at that point it would have benefited them greatly to be part of a town like St. Andrews.
There was, and actually at the time there was some leveraging of St. Andrews to help give them a voice. That was the main thing that through the white paper that the province really wanted to achieve, is to give the LSDs a larger voice with local government representation. And that's a great example that you just did. That's an issue that was greatly impacting residents, and to have a formal voice, they really didn't. They worked together as neighbors and did a great job of doing it. But I think by having a voice for that community, I think it's important. Do I think that the bylaws of St. Andrews should be the same as what they should be in Shamcook and Bayside? Personally, I don't. That there's a rural way of life. There's there's certain things that you get for living in the country, and there's certain things you get for living in the municipality. And I don't think that all one paintbrush is going to work in this situation. So there's a lot of conversations we have. First of all, like, what are we going to be named?
Right.
So I don't see a way in which we change the names of our communities. I was part of living in Halifax. You had the municipality, the greater municipality of Halifax, but when you lived in Bedford, you lived in Bedford. When you lived in Sackville, you lived in Sackville. Together, we were the regional municipality of Halifax. But I assume that's what we're going to do here. But if you're Chipman Minto, what do you call yourself?
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations that have. For myself, I guess the concerns for St. Andrews is we had some priorities that we set early on a council. We want to make sure that if we have new members of council, that those priorities are their priorities as well. So we might have to go through that exercise. We want to make sure that the individuals that are joining us want to look out for the residents from the areas that they come from, but in the same sense, be part of the greater team. We really have some momentum working as a team, every voice at the table. You don't want negative energy to maybe take that apart. So I'm hoping the people that join our council are ones that want to make sure they represent their area, but also work together to try to move important issues like housing ahead, and issues like that. So we'll see a lot to figure out. Personally, you talked that the Regional Service Commission is getting some more responsibility. Things like economic development, tourism. Like when you hear things like that in your community, you want to make sure, especially things like tourism, that whatever is happening, that we're actively involved and it's a process that's going to work for our community. Not to say that tourism is important in St. Stephen and St. George, but it is our primary industry. So we want to make sure that it's well represented. We have a local voice.
Right. It definitely broadens the scope of what you'll have to look after as mayor. Do you think it will impact your job greatly, as well as the job of the other councillors?
I think it is. I guess when you look at these new responsibilities that are being cascaded to the Regional Service Commission, we've kind of taken a Regional Service Commission and we have less representation because we shrunk the number of positions at the table. So essentially you have less than 10 people that are the vote for all of these issues. So I'm really hoping that when we talk about tourism, when we talk about economic development, that it's not just the mayors at the table. No disrespect to myself, but I feel like if you have the same, 8 people or 7 people around the table on all these issues, you're really not getting any new ideas. So I'm hoping that they allow councillors to sit at these tables, or even members from the community. go back to tourism, there's some people that aren't on town council in St. Andrews that know more about tourism than myself and town council. So I think that the way in which the job, it's going to greatly change. The regional mindset is going to have to probably be a bigger scope, and we're going to have to realize that certain initiatives are going to be done with a regional lens. So what it all means, still this process is just kicking off, but you want to make sure when you do something that you do it the right way. So we're apprehensive, but we're going to the table in hopes that we can together actually elevate all these great initiatives that we're all working on.
Right, and then on the topic of names, I guess we will have, I think we're Entity 56 right
Entity
now.
50, someone said Entity 56 by the sea, or sounds like something from Lost or something,
Hunger
right?
Games, yeah.
Yeah, Hunger Games, yeah, there you go. So I don't think we'll stick with that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let me know if we need to come back and do a brainstorm with the public. Perhaps we can help.
I'm assuming that we'll still be the the municipality of St. Andrews, and then it'll be just like, well, are you from St. Andrews or are you from Shamrock or Bay? Like I think I'm hoping everybody keeps their mind, but I want to hear from the LSDs to make sure that they want to keep the names the same. But I don't see it being any different. We're all historic in our own ways, but to go and change names right now, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But again, if you're Minto Chipman, what do you do then? Hyphenate it? Like, right. I guess that's what's been done in the past with some communities, like Perth and over. Like I think there's been some examples of that, right? And I think even Florenceville, Bristol kind of merged together, and they hyphenated at times. So let's just say our challenge is a lot easier than theirs at this point.
Well, another challenge that you have put on the table in the last council meeting is emissions reduction for the area, and it's quite an ambitious target. I'd love for you to tell people who maybe missed the last council meeting a little bit about what was discussed and what goals you plan to meet in terms of climate change as a community.
Absolutely. So we looked at our greenhouse gas emissions. We partnered with Eastern Charlotte Waterways. They did a report on kind of how much emissions the town of St. Andrews exerts. And we got some positive news. So since 2008, and this report was effective as of 2020, the town of St. Andrews over that 12-year period lowered its emissions by municipal assets. So the arena that we're in right now, producing water actually emits quite a bit of emissions as well. So we lowered our emissions by 22%. So like that is actually a solid movement on the needle. So what we're doing is setting a target to look ahead to say what can we do. So council was unified and obviously wanting to continue to lower emissions. But what we really had to figure out is what the target was and what the timeline was. So what we ended up settling on is the original motion said that we were going to lower it by 30% by 2030, and we changed that to 2034 because we're going on 2020 numbers. We're already 2 years into that. We want to make sure that we give enough time for council and staff to make impact. It's one thing to set these targets. It's another thing to come up with an action plan and actually do it. So a lot of healthy conversation. I guess the big one that comes is we're going to have to spend money to get there. Right. It doesn't happen on its own. But if you look at some of the other programs between the federal and provincial government, especially on the federal side, there's some significant pots of money the town can leverage to lower emissions. And someone did ask me, they're like, well, St. Andrews isn't a major emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, so why focus on that? And it's a fair comment, but in the same sense, we still can do better. And if you think of St. Andrews and the impacts on climate change, the rising sea levels, no one's got more at stake in New Brunswick, arguably, than our community. There's very few that are going to be hit by rising sea levels as much as St. Andrews. There's projected, 50-year floods, 100-year floods. The projection means that we're going to have to do our best to change both our infrastructure, but also the way in which we go day to day. And the other thing is our community is known for marine science, research, things like that. So for St. Andrews to be a leader in reducing greenhouse gas emission, it feels right. And the council that the town of St. Andrews has elected, I will say, is very environmentally conscious, and there's a lot of wealth of knowledge there. When you heard about like Mark Blanchard, he spoke very, very knowledgeable about the matter. And I look at Councillor Jamie Hurdle, one of the debate comments that came out of it. He said, I'd rather set the target at 30% miss it and get 28% than set the target at 20% and miss it at 18%. And that's the spirit that we have to do. We can do better. And the other thing is St. Andrews doesn't have a whole lot of municipal assets compared to some communities. We can really focus on the ones that emit the most emissions and really move the needle. So there was a positive conversation. It was actually, I think, the most debated item of the night, which surprised me a little bit, but it was good to sit on a council that talks so much about environmental issue.
Right. And I will say, as someone who's lived in big cities in the past, this town actually has been the most progressive place I've ever lived, because it seems like everyone at every age group in every industry is so aware of climate change and how it even affects their day-to-day life. So it's really inspiring. And sometimes with a small group of people, what I love is it doesn't take that many people to get on board with an idea. So you can affect change quite immediately.
It does, and you sparked me to think of something. So Alex Lively was a student of mine from SJDA, so he's my co-op student, and I got him to actually do some survey on some town issues and kind of like, what assets do you like rank the youth center, the arena, like just where do you think improvements are, what would make you come back to town. But one of the things that jumped out at me the most out of that report is how the next generation, so our high school students, rank environmental issues higher than what probably someone my age or even generation before me would. Is the youth of our future really want to live in a community that actually cares about the environment, is doing stuff to be more green. And I think that the council is definitely a little bit younger, where it seems like it's going that way. So to put the environment at a little bit higher of a ranking, I think that it lines up with what the youth of our community want us to do. Mm-hmm. After all, they're the ones that are going to be here longer in theory, so they're definitely more environmentally conscious than generations before them.
It actually was a very engaging part of council, which I had to watch on Zoom, obviously, because of lockdown, which is another topic I'd love to speak to you about. I know that to say there's a silver lining that it comes now after what we did have a really busy Christmas season in town, allowed a lot of business, and I don't want to diminish from the fact that it is impacting a lot of businesses that can't operate the same way right now. What is the feedback from the business community in town?
So the business community, obviously we knew they had a great summer, so that at the end of the day, not to say the winter isn't important to some businesses, we have a number of businesses that stay open year round. It's tough right now. Specifically you look at people that are salons and spas, they can't go to work. Mm-hmm. You got restaurants. I just talked to an individual yesterday. I'm doing my best to do that for the community, eat out every day. I'm happy to do that. But I was talking to someone who just recently acquired a restaurant, like literally last month. And then this month they've got to pay rent and they can't have people actually eat in the restaurant. So to say that there's not hardships, there definitely is. The thing that I actually heard the most about is that a lot of these people are self-employed and they don't qualify for any government assistance. And I understand that there's a new grant. I saw opportunities in New Brunswick up to $2,000, but there's a lot of people that are concerned because they don't qualify for government programs and they can't work. So, I feel really terrible about that. The thing that you could do is, even if you don't feel like it, order out from a restaurant. There's a number of restaurants that have changed to takeout. And the other thing too is don't be afraid to get a gift certificate. Like they're paying rent, get a gift certificate now, use it in July. Mm-hmm. You're going to be back at these restaurants. They could use the cash flow right now. But I understand that COVID, the cases in our area have dramatically gone up. It goes without saying. You probably know a bunch of people. I know a bunch of people that have had COVID. And you see that the government's trying to do its best to end it quicker than just keep this. So slow down the numbers. The impacts of that are to be debated. Will it work? Will it not? I'm not sure. But, you got to put faith in they're making the right decisions. They have, overall throughout the course of the pandemic guided us to better times in a lot of our areas. So you got to hope there's a reason to believe, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we got neighbors that are struggling right now. So keep them in mind.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, so many of us know people, friends, family that have had COVID recently. The nice thing is, though, with so many people being boosted, I have some family members who've had COVID recently, and luckily it hasn't impacted them as severely as it could have.
We got to hope that as the variants continue to happen, that they lose a bit of punch too. It seems like this current variant, I'm not saying that it can't be harmful. I'm not saying you can't be in hospital. We know you can, but it seems like overall it's starting to morph a little bit into something that appears to be more like a cold for a lot of people. So hopefully it continues to lose the punch. So I know a lot of people, I remember that we said that, oh, this will be 6 months. We said, oh, it's going to last to the end of the year. I'm saying I don't know when this is going to end, but we were all ready for it to end. So let's hope we continue to get to a better place where we can get, no matter what your view is on it, where we can all get to a place that you feel like you're happy and able to live your life.
Right. There's this hope that this pandemic is transitioning to endemic, and obviously time will tell. But nevertheless, St. Andrews is obviously gearing up once again for a busy summer. The silver lining to the pandemic seemed to be that we are the destination for so many New Brunswickers. I saw MSN called St. Andrews one of the top 20 most adorable towns in Canada this week. Was another accolade received on a.
It's good to see travel writers, because not a lot of people have been able to come in and cover our town. So it was a nice feature on MSN, and I think you're right. I think that what St. Andrews tourism kind of proved a little bit is that we're more resilient than we thought. And I say it every time, but I've got to say it again. We are so thankful to everyone that comes to visit us, but especially New Brunswickers the last 2 years, because that, at the end of the day, is who kept our businesses open. Mm-hmm. If they didn't support us, I think our downtown would look a lot different right now. But there was, you've got people that are reporting record seasons last year. Myself, my day job's at Kingsbury Garden. We were up for visitation more than a normal year. So we're grateful.
On the flip side of that, though, is obviously the housing crisis. When you're busy and you need staff, especially, they need somewhere to live. And this is obviously something felt on a national level, but St. Andrews has its own hardships in terms of the housing crisis, but there are some goals in the near future of how to correct this a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about an update on what projects are underway?
It's actually a really great transition, so good for you. Obviously there is a worker shortage, and to your point is it's not just a St. Andrews issue, it's not just a New Brunswick issue, but in St. Andrews it's magnified, and the same can be said for St. Stephen, is we had such low housing inventory before the pandemic that with everybody moving here during the pandemic, it's actually magnified it that much worse. And the other thing that you're seeing is the prices have gone through the roof. So to get a starter home in this community or even neighboring communities, it's gone up significantly. So it is very hard for young workers who we need to work these jobs that we're talking about to really find a place in this community. So we are actively working at expanding the number of units that we have in our community. Not just affordable, but units. Like supply and demand. The more places you have available, the more options there are for people to rent, and the more likely that the price is going to be something that's appealing. So there is a number of developments that are reaching second and third reading right now that should be coming. There's indication that the Van Horn Garden Homes at Charlie Bourgeois, which will be for rent on the corner of Mowat Drive and Bar Road, those should be happening relatively soon. We have new garden homes being constructed, 10 of them by Kingsbury Garden up on Victoria Terrace. So they're moving along to where they need to be. But the one that I've been very, very open about is there's a process going behind the scenes on it, is I would love for this council this year to begin the process of actually putting in an apartment building behind the New Brunswick Community College. And we've started by working with the province. I started with the New Brunswick Community College, and then we start working with the province, and we've deemed that as surplus property with them, and the town will be acquiring that. It's going through the last stages of that. I fully expect that as early as next month, council will be voting on purchasing land behind the New Brunswick Community College, and we'll be going to RFP to build an apartment building, and there will be a number of things that council is going to look at, but number of units is important. Affordability is important, and these aren't going to be just for New Brunswick Community College students. So there's lots of studies that show that intergenerational are important, and the other thing too is if we're using taxpayers' dollars, it should be open to all members of the community to have this opportunity. And then what we're hoping is that we've got a number of developers that I've talked to that seem like they're interested, and I'm fully optimistic this council completely supports this initiative, and I think that we could see an RFP coming out for apartment behind the New Brunswick Community College within the next couple months. Like it's getting close, and that would be, in my mind, there's enough land there to build a significant apartment building there that would really help rentals in St. Andrews. So a lot to figure out, a lot to be done. It's been a very, very hard process. This began when I was deputy mayor. I was fortunate the previous council supported it, and then this next council, we've listed our priorities of projects, and this is the number one priority for council, is this project. Doesn't mean the other ones aren't important, but this is the one that as a council we want to actually make a reality, and all members of council have been supportive, so it's kind of been a seamless transition between the last council to this one.
Great.
And hopefully, it's getting close to the finish line. Environmental assessment needs done to make sure that we can actually build there. So that's getting through the end of that, and I fully expect a motion before council this coming month.
Wow. Okay, then that's obviously a topic too. You bring a lot of knowledge and experience to with your job as a director at Kingsbrae. Are you still finding this is a huge issue in terms of staffing, and are a lot of businesses saying that it's housing is also part of the problem in finding staffing for summer?
It certainly is. So Kingsbrae, we've got a little bit of an advantage. Is Lucinda Flamer, who I work for, she's got vision. So she what was it now? 5 years ago. Saw this as becoming a bigger and bigger issue, so we purchased an apartment building in downtown St. Andrews. So she knew it was starting to get bad, so we've got a little bit of advantage that we can recruit and have some staff accommodation. Is it enough? Probably not, but I'm not going to complain because I think combined we have 14 rental units now, so I think a lot of people would be like, don't complain too much, but it is like not every business has that opportunity. If you looked at skilled workers in particular, like culinary servers, but also line cooks and things like that, those are the ones that we're struggling the most to find. Mm-hmm. So I really expect that to be a very competitive market, and then even servers. I talked to a couple gentlemen last summer that were serving, and they worked 3 or 4 different places in the community. And that's going to be hard on them, but they love the opportunity to make money, but balancing schedules. The big concern about that is when you only have so many workers is I fully expect, and it's unfortunate, but I fully expect to see a lot of restaurants only open 5 days a week next year. It's how a lot of businesses have adapted to a shorter workplace. The demand is there, is the really unfortunate reality. Mm-hmm. And the concern is when you have visitors coming to St. Andrews on a Monday, Tuesday, because that's where a lot of them close, you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and still giving them experience of great places to eat. So this housing is going to help the NBCC that I'm talking about, but it should also help businesses in downtown St. Andrews where students can actually stay there in the summer and work in our community.
And we do have a lot of new businesses, I think, opening for summer 2022, but I'm going to save that topipic for next time.
I'll let you unveil them with them. There are a few I've heard of, but I'm not going to be the one. But you know what? It is exciting to hear that even though it's been tough times, obviously, that our economy has been doing well enough to know that a lot of people are still thinking of opening a business in St. Andrews. So I remember very early on, I think, sitting down with you and talking about some of my fears with what could happen during the pandemic, and it's been a long thing. But one thing is for sure is that we're very thankful that there's not every community sitting here saying the same thing. So I never take it for granted.
Thank you for being here today, Brad.
Pleasure as always.
My guest today has been Brad Henderson, Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Your Town Matters.